What's going on, PowerUp community? This is the Coach David hanging out once again with Zach DPT, who's actually about to finish up finals and formal classes and just go hang out in the clinical setting and finally get done with schooling and everything. We've got Zach with us today. We're actually heading into whenever you end up listening to this, we're actually heading into like the Couch to 5K program. And so I thought who better to bring up than our resident expert and kind of just talk all things running from kind of the clinical side. And that way we can get a lot different perspective and help everybody, whether you're doing the challenge with us now or whether you listen to this later and you're thinking about getting into running. This should be a really good tool on how to best get started and then to navigate kind of some of the issues that people see along the way when they jump into a new program or just kind of stack a lot of running. So Zach, go ahead and say, hey, introduce yourself to anybody who hasn't heard from you already, and then get us started.
Yeah, well, quite the intro. I appreciate you having me on again. Like David said, I'm finishing up school to become a doctor of physical therapy. Actually, in the Monday of the final week of school as we speak. So I'm very excited to move forward and get into the clinical setting that, David highlighted. I'm really excited to talk about running, kind of from my perspective. I think there's a lot of, hype around running. Everybody wants to be able to run. Everybody wants to be fast. And whether it's, a high-end athlete that wants to be able to sprint, increase their 40, or somebody that's just transitioning into running for general health, it's important that you're able to do it in a consistent way that's sustainable over time. So I just kind of want to touch on a few topics relevant to people getting kind of started in running as an activity. I think it's really important to think about running as a skill, more like trying to acquire being good at math or being good at physics. You can practice it, and with reps, you're going to get a better result in the end. I think it's important to approach any sort of athletics in the same way, to kind of be inquisitive, allow yourself to grow, and allow yourself to be bad at a thing when you're new at it. So let's go into the Couch to 5K challenge, expecting ourselves to have some challenges, expecting our bodies to get sore, expecting things to be a little bit more difficult than you might expect, but to continue to push through and stay consistent throughout the whole challenge. So that's just kind of a thought. I don't know, David, do you run as part of your training or as an activity for you?
So I'm going to say I don't run currently, but I've done lots and lots of running over the over my career in sports and military and all that.
Okay. Not to put you on the spot here. I was hoping to do this before you could do it to me, but are you planning on doing the Couch to 5K challenge next month?
Well, so we're actually just started it now. And so I know.
Oh, this month. Yes, yeah. It's the second. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, we're in May already.
Great.
It's crazy.
We are in May. I'm sorry. I'm head down here.
Oh yeah, no, we gave you a pass this week with all with all the school that you haven't done to. What I'll say is I don't want to, but I have to. Right?
Okay.
We're getting the community in it, so we want to kind of pull together. But that is something I've noticed just kind of over the last, I'm not old, but I'm not young, right? I'm 35.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I'm running around with my kids and stuff, I have noticed that, my endurance just isn't what it used to be, and I'm on my feet all day for work. So that's an area that I know that I've wanted to get back to a little bit. And so then this will kind of just force me to.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great thing to do. I'm kind of in a similar spot. Grew up playing sports, played sports all the way up into college. And then got injured playing sports, as a lot of people do. And I haven't gotten back to the point where I've been running regularly, right? You go from sports practices where you're sprinting and running and cutting and doing all that to kind of, living the life as a person, sitting in couches, being comfortable in chairs and laying in bed, It's a very different kind of lifestyle. And I think the positions that we put ourselves into throughout the day can really dictate how we're able to take on the stress of running and kind of rehab from it. That kind of pushes me into talking about chairs, which I can go on and on about. I don't know if you have a soapbox about, but they don't generally put our bodies in great positions, in natural positions, natural resting positions. And that's why we get so many people with these neck, shoulder, head issues from sitting at desks and being kind of in that posture. And a similar thing can be true in running, right? We want to not only have good posturing, good form as we do our exercises in the gym, but we also want to embody that as we run. We want to be putting our body into that most advantageous movement pattern, right? We want to be moving as fluidly as possible, taking in the force from the ground, right? Absorbing the force from the ground as well as we can, and then transmitting that through our bodies very smoothly to then propel ourselves forward. Unlike walking, where you have a brief period of time where both feet are on the ground, we're in single leg stance just about every stride, right? We're striding on one foot, going over to the next one. There's no time where we have both our feet down. So we have to move in a way that allows the forces to be taken through the whole system, and so that we're not building up stress in one location. I think that being able to run and move in that way can then transition a new task like running into something that's actually therapeutic, because you're moving so efficiently and so effectively that you're training your body to move in a way that's actually healing rather than degrading over time. So that's kind of, I guess, the end goal of running, right? I don't know if you've ever felt that in sports where you're running and everything just feels to be clicking on all cylinders. It's very smooth, you feel balanced, and you're able to stride it out and feel fast without too much effort. That's what we should be going for as we're trying to sustain a pace over time. Because the couch to 5K, we're running upwards of a 5K. So we need to be able to run a pace that we can sustain throughout that whole time. You're not going to want to be doing what's called overstriding, where you're taking strides that are just too big, too long, step to step, for your pace in running. So what ends up happening, you're taking these big leaps rather than correctly transmitting the force. You're having to take these big leaps and absorb a huge amount of force and then very quickly turn that force over and bring it back forward. So that just doesn't give your body enough time to properly move and take the force through the whole system. You can then run into that overuse injury that not everybody likes to talk about, but that everybody ends up talking about with running, because we don't commonly train running in a way that properly absorbs force and then releases it into the ground. David, do you have any stories about running injuries or anything that has bothered you in the past, or any friends that are really into running?
So I know for me, I have really high arches. And
Okay.
So when I've had like the wrong shoes, and I know this was in your notes earlier as well, when we were kind of talking about the episode, when I didn't have the right shoes, I would deal with a lot of plantar fasciitis.
Okay.
At points at points would be it could hurt to walk. When I was in high school doing more consistently on like the track and stuff like that, then, I dealt with shin splints.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, those were kind of just like the normal, like I didn't get any like major injuries running, just kind of those little nagging, normal runner stuff.
Yeah, I would say that's more common if we're going to think about the population of people who want to run and sustain a pace. You're more likely, if you think about the demands of the activity, you're more likely to get that overuse type of injury rather than in sports. In a sports setting, let's talk football, somebody trying to make a sharp cut, that's when we can get that catastrophic non-contact injury. So more commonly in the running population, you can see these types of wear and tear type injuries, where if we rewind back, we can work on teaching our bodies to bring in the force and to release it into the ground more effectively. But then we can also strengthen structures to be more resilient against the stress. So that's really the two-headed attack of trying to prevent the running type injuries, in my head at least, would be to, one, teach the body to take in the force more effectively and have it be less shearing on the body, and then to also provide the proper strengthening protocols to enhance the integrity of the tissue that you're trying to protect. Then we can go into the whole idea of the running program and managing stress and nutrition and sleep, because all those play a factor in the health of your tissue, your ability to take on stress, whether it be stress at work, stress at home, stress from a hard workout, or stress in the gym. It all takes a toll on your body's ability to recover from and then grow and build from exercise. So what we need to be able to do for our common running injuries is think about them more as the structures involved, as in, is this a foot problem? Is this an ankle problem, knee, hip, to find out the location in your body that's taking on the most stress, right? What about the technique of your running is then causing that specific area to take on more stress? As you're striding through, are you not rotating through your hip as much as you need to be? And then therefore your knee has to be a rotational joint, which we can understand the knee is a hinge joint and wants to just bend very, very primarily. So if we have to do too much rotation in our knee because our hip doesn't rotate enough, then we're going to run into problems over time with increased stress and maybe decreased recovery. We can run into that overuse knee injury. So I like to break it down more thinking about, is this a foot issue? Is this an ankle issue, knee? Kind of break it down more broadly rather than thinking about the, direct anatomical structure. Once we can think about it more broadly, then we can think about how the whole global system is moving. And then we can kind of try to affect how that system moves through space as you run. And that would be the game plan for preventing and keeping somebody away from being injured as they try to pursue running as a hobby or an activity. We can get into more specifics about, if you have plantar fasciitis, this is the recommendation. But I think kind of a global understanding of you're able to change the way that your body moves through space. And you're able to do that in such a way that benefits you in running, so that your body is taking in the forces from running and propelling yourself forward in a way that is helpful and restorative to tissue rather than degrading. And then you can also do that specific strength work that talked about and loading the tissue and making sure that it gets enough nutrition and healing to preserve the integrity of it. Is that I know that you work with people that experience injuries. So I was wondering if you kind of have a similar mindset as far as the rehab side of, or the preventative side of running injuries, because I think anybody in this space can really affect somebody's ability, even in pain or not, to do this kind of thing.
Yeah, so for me, I've only worked with a couple people on like their actual like gait, right? Mm-hmm. Which if you're listening is kind of basically just your running form. Mm-hmm. It's going to be like length, stride, and then posture, upper body, a couple of little different things. But kind of what you're talking about is figuring out, what joint is the issue. And so usually if there's a joint that's not stable, the other joints, below and above become a little bit, things will get a little bit stiffer to provide a little bit more stability. So for me in general, I do a lot more with just flexibility and mobility work. I think, and I'm not going to remember who I was talking to about it, but it was interesting how much work actually goes into running, that people take running as like a step one into fitness, when it's actually like a pretty athletic movement.
Yeah, if you break it down, it's a complicated task. That's kind of what I was getting at when I was talking about the foot over foot. You're in single leg support, jumping off one leg and propelling yourself forward to the other. It's not like people, this is how overuse injuries happen. People think that running is that sort of introductory activity where they might need to do some of that prerequisite strength work and supplementary cardio work to get their system ready for this kind of activity, because running's tough on the system.
It is. The only real like basic starter exercise is walking,
which is one of the best exercises, if I may add. I add walking in. I'm on a walking program myself. I walk 10 minutes after every meal, and I try to get at least a 30-minute walk in every other day, just as getting more steps in. Practicing walking with good form is going to help you reach good form as you run. very translatable to life. You need to be able to walk everywhere all the time. If you unfortunately don't have that ability or not, we can work on other mobility, assists. But yeah, walking's a great exercise. I see so much benefit in it with even chronic pain patients. Just getting up and getting walking can be so important in somebody's pursuit of being active.
Yeah, and when you look at it from which our bodies, despite what view you take in, creation or evolution or Big Bang or however you look at it, in a physical evolutionary aspect, running is done on a need basis. Walking is it. And so, like what you're saying, these overuse injuries stack up because you're not meant to. Some of the people that have some of the hardest times health-wise are ultra endurance athletes, because it's so much extra stress and strain on the body that it's not designed to go through on a consistent basis. Now, if you take somebody who's deconditioned, hasn't worked out in 2 years, like a lot of people we're seeing right now, coming out from COVID, you go to run, that's like the average person taking on ultra endurance. It's the same ratio change, percent change. And so you got somebody who, like what you mentioned before with the chairs, who's been sitting for 2 years, and now we're going to go run, which everybody has convinced themselves is a basic task, which is something that we should be able to do well enough that it seems basic, but it's actually, very athletic, full body, all the muscles, all the joints, all the flexibilities working, and like it get hurt.
Yeah, no, it definitely is a complicated task, and that's why I think it's so important if you're going to be starting up a program similar to the Couch to 5K, or if you're going to be somebody who takes on running as part of your fitness or activity journey, is to do the prerequisite training, to do the proper research on your own running technique and form. There's people out there that's what they do. They watch people run, they help you cue it, so that it's more efficient and more effective on your body, and to help your time, of course. But there's people like physical therapists, like running coaches, like GOTA coaches that teach people how to run in a way that is restorative. They can then sustain that pace for a long period of time, and then also have the flexibility, mobility training, whatever you want to call it, making sure that we have our long enough tissues, that our back chain, our posterior chain, all the muscles behind our body that propel us forward are not only long enough, but strong enough through the movements that we want it to do. So it involves loading specific positions relative to running, making sure that we're tracking the force properly through our feet. Feet are, we could probably talk about training for feet forever, but I think everybody should have strong feet. And if you can't pick up all your toes individually and wave them pinky toe to big toe and then big toe to pinky toe, then you could probably benefit from some foot exercise training to strengthen your first contact with the ground. So I think foot care and having the right footwear also is super, super important for people that want to run, and just humans in general, I suppose.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, because it's something I've seen catch a little bit more traction is, the foot care and the foot training. There's
like the barefoot sprinter on Instagram, I think. Shout out to him, I guess. But yeah, definitely, I've seen a lot more of it recently.
Yeah, that one, I have like the barefoot style shoes that I wear all day, and you would think like, there's very little to almost no padding in them. And because I wore those years ago when I was still in the military, and then stopped just because I wasn't doing, as much. And then my feet started bothering me more being in like regular sneakers on my feet for 10 to 12 hours. And so then I changed back to the barefoot shoes. And for the first week, it was tough because, it was things, just like other muscles in the body. It was, my feet weren't used to doing that anymore. All those little muscles having to do their job. I was starting to get some of those plantar issues again. And so then I went back to the barefoot shoes, and now I've got no problems.
Yeah, it's very interesting kind of looking at the foot itself, and then also how the foot interacts with like the most common shoes that you see. A lot of times what shoes do to the foot is they condense it. They take a nice spread out foot, kind of bring all the toes together, and also like most shoes try to artificially raise the arch a little bit or provide that arch support within the shoe. And a lot of times what that ends up happening is we get toes that don't function individually or aren't able to press properly into the ground, as you walk, and you get a foot that isn't as rigid as we would like it, because you have all that cushion and all that artificial support around the foot. I suppose this is thinking from kind of a hypothetical perfect situation. Each person has your own individual foot, your own individual anatomy, your goals, desires, history of your history of anatomy, history of activity. All that plays in. And I also wear barefoot shoes, but for somebody that might be starting the journey, I suppose, of strengthening their feet and taking, extra care of their feet, as I think everyone should, the barefoot shoe probably isn't step one. So everybody kind of, has to start at their own spot. But I think the end goal for everybody is to have, healthy, pain-free, strong, supportive feet. I guess what I like to think about when I'm selecting a shoe or when I'm helping somebody to pick a shoe, would be to pick a shoe that lets your toes be toes. So when you put your foot in your shoe, you're not feeling like all your toes are touching each other, that you feel nice and spread out, and that you feel like you're able to use the outside edge of your foot properly as you walk, and you're also able to use your big toe and be spread out in that area. And then I think it comes down to your stability and cushion demands then, right? If you're somebody that's just entering the Couch to 5K challenge after not running for X amount of time, you're probably going to need a little bit more cushion and perhaps a bit more stability than somebody that's been, wearing barefoot shoes for years and running with barefoot shoes for years, right? You have a different foot, you have different goals, and you have different demands. So you would want to, figure out exactly the conditioning that your foot is in and what is most comfortable and feels most safe to you as you go throughout your activity, and then kind of go from there. And keep in mind that, with proper specific exercise protocol and strengthening and, all that proprioceptive, we can use all the words, but more awareness of your feet is basically what it comes down to. By bringing more awareness to your feet throughout the day, you're going to notice that your needs change, and that's okay. And you might need to transition through a couple different shoes until you find ultimately what is most effective for you. I could get on my soapbox about why I love barefoot shoes, why I wear them. I own 3 pairs currently. I have one that's very minimalist, that I wear when I work out. So I'm getting as close to a barefoot feel as possible, able to do all my strengthening, running, whatever it is. And that I have a walking shoe that is a bit more durable indoor, outdoor, has a little bit more support so that I'm not, taking as much on as I would in that more minimalist shoe. And then I kind of have a house shoe that's also kind of the barefoot style. I mix in every once in a while other style shoes. For running, I use the kind of more cushioned set of barefoot shoes that I also walk in. But I was wondering, David, do you run in your barefoots as well?
So I don't run much right now, right? But yes, I will. And
will you be running, I guess?
Yes, I will, because the first time that I actually got, and this is years ago. This is a solid 10 years ago, when there wasn't a whole bunch of different brands. And I think Vibram was what I had at the time. It was Vibram or Merrill. Okay. And running, because it was in the military, so you're running 2 to 5, maybe 8 miles like every day. And actually switching to the barefoot shoe to run in is what fixed my arch and my plantar fasciitis issues.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. people might think, because there's been a craze, I think, about the barefoot shoes recently, kind of due to this whole foot strengthening thing that's kind of been happening. And, you know, with anything becoming popular, you get the critics, and there's people that have become critical of the barefoot shoe, saying how it might do more harm for people than good. And that's kind of where I touched on the being specific to your own case, and knowing that you might not day one need to start with a barefoot shoe. But I do believe that barefoot shoes, being barefoot, people should be able to be barefoot for however long they need to be barefoot, and they shouldn't have any foot, ankle, knee, hip, back pain. The pain is something in your body telling you that whatever's going on is not working well. It's not working for you. So we need to find what is working. And I think what does work is having strong supportive feet, which I think is achieved through using barefoot shoes throughout the day. Or I don't know if you've seen, there was one of the survival shows, one of the guys used to only be barefoot through the whole survival journey, miles and miles out in the desert. I forget what the show was, but that was my first exposure to somebody being barefoot, and kind of the concept of wanting to have strong and supportive feet. And it was interesting to see. He would go through the whole, however many stage days of TV show survival trip it was, but he was barefoot the whole time, and they would show him walking through some gnarly stuff, and he would just take it because of the years and years of buildup of strength and callus underneath his foot. It's amazing. It's amazing the way that the human body adapts to the stresses that it's given, which, you know, if I can plug learning to run with good technique can help you lay down tissue and expose your body to stresses in a specific way that is kind of that restorative type running that we would want to be looking for. Each time you run, I want you feeling better when you get done, and better the next week, and better. We want that continued improvement of how you're feeling, rather than feeling like you have this constant burden and this hard compressive act of running. So I think learning to do that properly, using the outside edge of your foot effectively, heels away, being back chain dominant as you run, can really help us get the most out of our running. And I think our running technique probably should be addressed more than getting, into the weeds of shoe selection. If I can be simple about shoe selection, it's that let your toes be toes, wide toe box. I like a 0 drop shoe. So your heel isn't elevated relative to your toes. And then whatever your goals and desires are, pick your shoe based on the amount of cushion that's there and the stability that you feel in the shoe. That's the long and the short of shoes for running, or kind of shoes in general. But you can get into there's all the Hoka, the Asics, this brand, that brand. Everybody's gonna have a different favorite brand, but I think that if you can meet those needs, if you can allow your foot to be a foot, you're not elevated heel relative to toes, and then you have whatever stability and cushion needs met, I think you've got a good shoe.
And I think one of the points you keep going back to of the running form and running technique, I feel like that's the space for the barefoot critics, right? So we're having people have adapted to walking however they want because the shoes we wear give us no natural feedback, right? So when you switch to that barefoot shoe, you're getting immediate feedback on if even just your walking form and posture is off, right? Yeah. And so when people aren't addressing that, then yes, the barefoot shoe, like if I'm just constantly heel striking the crap out of my foot, and we also, if we want to take the evolutionary argument, we have to be able to counter argue that the ground is now much harder than it ever used to be, because the ground is now manufactured into like hardwood and concrete, right? So
I would also just add that we spend less time interacting with the ground now than we ever have.
Oh, and that's a huge, that's that's a whole separate thing I can get on as far as
that's what I was going
as
to try
far
to
as
let you
like
keep going, cause
as far as like the
that's
body,
neat,
you know, you can actually balance out your mood and your ions and your, you know, positive and negative just with more barefoot ground contact. Right? Nobody even knows what the ground feels like anymore. But that's kind of where an argument can come in, and that's also what you had mentioned before is kind of working your way into it, right? And so in the beginning, you know, when I was getting back into the barefoot shoes, I would still wear my regular shoes once a week, you know, to kind of give me that cushion back, right? Because if it's something in the tissue, you know, when we're talking about the tissue, if it's something the tissue in my foot's not used to, and I'm beating it up, it's going to get a little sore, it's going to get a little inflamed as it gets used to it again. So I give it those days off, you know, just like when somebody's adapting to a standing desk. You don't buy the desk and then stand for 8 hours, right? You alternate back and forth, you let your body kind of get used to it. So anything that is, you know, if we dive full, you know, head on, full steam into something brand new, then there's probably going to be a negative effect because we're not properly training up to it. And I feel like that's where there is room for kind of the barefoot critics, is that like, here, wear a barefoot shoe, good luck.
Yeah. No, I think a lot of the criticism of barefoot shoe might come from that underlying idea that our bodies can't change in that way. Because people, when we think about putting on tissue to the body or influencing tissue, everybody thinks about muscle, right? Everybody thinks about, oh, I'm training in the gym to put on muscle, which you likely are, right? You're causing movement in the body, you're stressing the muscular tissue and causing, you know, all that good stuff to happen to grow more. But you're also influencing all the other tissue. Some of it just deforms or changes slower than muscle tissue. You're influencing the tendons, you're influencing the bones, the ligaments, the way you stress your body, and any tissue in the body, it's going to adapt to that. So like kind of we've talked about, it's about the whole thing about staying injury free is to move in such a way that evenly distributes it through that stress through the whole system. And then to also back all that up with lifestyle factors, such as, you know, proper periodization and programming of all your activities, good nutrition, whatever that means to you. We don't have to get into that today. Good sleep, and, you know, just generally good wellness habits, right? Like, you're not gonna have a long, successful career in running for long periods of time if you're approaching running like you're angry and need to go as fast as you can. You know, you're not going to be able to pace yourself and be as measured and as mindful as you need to be in the right psychological state to complete the task. So you know, there's a lot of different factors that play into being good at something or being able to sustain an activity for a long period of time. But it is important that you take the time to hit all of the boxes that you can. I like to think about kind of like day by day. If you have 10 boxes to check, and I check 10 every day for 15 years, that's way more boxes checked than if I check 2 every day for those 15 years.
Definitely. Okay, so we've covered shoes, right? We're talking about
covered shoes.
We're talking about toes being toes. We're talking about toe box drop, stability. We're talking about working on flexibility, mobility. We're talking about strengthening the foot, you know, ankle, you know, all the different muscles. We're talking about even, you know, you've even mentioned nutrition to make sure that the body's recovering and building and developing properly. We talked about, and one of the things I wanted to mention is a lot of times if you kind of just do like a Google map of your area and look for like running stores, like running shoe stores and running stores, a lot of times they'll have gait assessment or like run stride assessment technology to then help you kind of pick, you know, the right shoe, or to talk to you about how you need to be or how you should be striking, so you can kind of get that coaching. If you're not able to find like a one-on-one coach or don't want to, that'll at least get you started kind of in that right way so you'll know what to look for. So now let's imagine we have the person, they've got the barefoot shoes, they haven't run in 2 years, they're jumping all in, running 5 days a week. what would you see, since, I mean, there's lots of different things. So what would you see as maybe two of the most common, new runner or, overdoing it runner injuries? And, now we've got that injury, we maybe didn't take all the steps properly along the way to prevent them. And so then how do you recover from those to be able to keep going towards your goals?
That's a good question. I think most commonly with runners, I should probably have research for this, but probably most commonly for runners, we would see foot issues, I would think. You not always, but you can commonly get the pain in the front of the knee with running. People get that pretty often. But I think probably plantar fasciitis, whatever you like to call it, would be one of the most common things that we see in running. I think that you have some experience with it, but I think that might be number one if I had to pick one. Then we could get kind of into the shin splint area, but I think probably the two I'm going to pick are plantar fasciitis and then kind of low back pain. That might not be one that people think of commonly with running, but I think that's something that happens to runners that they tend to run through a lot. So we can start with plantar fasciitis. So if you haven't heard it, if you've never experienced it, essentially what it is, I'm picky with the words because it's called plantar fasciitis, and the itis infers that there's inflammation there. But commonly there's not inflammation active in this condition. But plantar heel pain, we'll call it heel pain, bottom of the foot pain with running, likely is due to increased stress over time due to the way that you move. So the long and the short of it is find out at what positions in running you're stressing that tissue through. You're going to have to take videos of it and watch it. That's the best way to do it. You watch yourself run, watch the way that your body is absorbing that stress, find those positions and strengthen it in those positions. But in general, what will happen is people will have tight calves as well with that kind of thing. So what we want to be doing is making sure that we're lengthening our calves, we're lengthening our hamstrings, making sure that we have good access to our whole ankle joint and our whole foot. So this can be done with like a good morning exercise or the hip hinge, standing hip hinge, doing that in a way that you're doing it, with good technique, hips back, rib cage forward, shoulders back, eyes forward, all that good stuff. Sliding the hips back and really tensioning all of the tissue behind you, working on lengthening the hamstrings, lengthening the glutes, lengthening the the calves, to be able to more effectively get that force transmitted up the chain rather than taking it hard into the foot with each step. Also, big toe strengthening would be another one that we would want to focus on for that. So being able to extend, pull your big toe up against resistance, push your big toe down against resistance. And then we would be working on, with the gait assessment, working on more effectively taking the force through the outside of your foot, almost sweeping the ground, as you might see like a cat or a bear do as they run. Kind of using our whole foot, the outside edge of our foot, to take the force off of that structure on the inside and underneath the foot. Because we have if you look at the outside of the foot, you have the pinky toe with a long bone running all the way down, all the way to the heel. We have all that good bone that we can load over time, rather than on the inside of our foot where we have a bunch of muscular tissue. We have that plantar fascia that we're talking about. So getting our force more effectively transferred to our outside edge is going to more effectively take the stress off the tissue as we run. It's so nuanced, right? Like with each individual case, it's going to be so different. But just a couple things to look out for is that transfer of force on the outside edge, making sure that your big toe is adequately strengthened and being used properly, and then making sure that your calves, hamstrings, and glutes have adequate length so that you can access your ankle and hip joints to create that engine forward. And then the kind of back pain, low back pain for runners, that ultimately is going to come down to coordinating your upper body and lower body smoothly as you run, and then allowing your spine to move fluidly as you run, and assuming that back chain dominant posture. I referenced it before, but essentially what that means is having your hips behind your ribs. So your rib cage is going to be slightly forward to your ribs. So therefore the muscles behind you, all of our big and powerful muscles meant to move us forward, are the ones that are supporting your body and most primed to move. So being in that posture is going to allow us to have most access to our shoulder joints as we try to swing our arms side to side, and most access to our hips as we reach out and load into a bow and then come through. So the biggest thing and most important thing, I think I've said it enough times, would be that, very detailed breakdown of the running technique. But then on top of that, for back pain, another great case to lengthen the back chain, lengthen all of your muscles, working on the mobility of your hips, the mobility of your spine, from the thoracic spine, your upper back, to your neck. I think it's really important that you understand that low back pain is never just low back pain. Everything is connected. Your foot's connected to the top of your head, because it's all in the same body. It is all connected. Your shoulder injury in high school is probably contributing to why you have knee pain now in some way, but likely that web that you could weave isn't most important. And we need to focus on the tasks that are difficult and the function we want to get back to. So what we need to do for somebody who wants to get back to running is find the technique in the task that is faulty and then correct it, so that then you can do the task that's most important. So it's going to start out with, deloading, letting the tissue calm down. Then we're going to assess, move forward, and then reload in a way that's restorative, and then get you moved on to, living and doing all the fun things that you'd like to do.
I don't even know what else I want to say. I want to be like, damn,
I
dude.
felt like that kind of summed it up. All right,
I think it went really well.
Yeah, I had a good time. I appreciate you having me on again. To be fully candid, am not as much of a runner as I think I will be at one point in my life. But I just think the mindset of approaching running as something that can be restorative is kind of an important one to have.
Well, and it has that ability. Even walking is shown to improve thought, to improve thinking and critical thinking and problem solving, because, the fluids in the brain and the forward momentum in the body. And so, like you said, when you're out there running, to run and to, be restorative, to almost have it as like a meditative exercise versus going out angry and trying to crush the pavement, a lot can happen. I used to walk, different places I've lived, I'd walk a mile or two to get to work, in the mornings, and then sometimes listen to a podcast, or sometimes just walk, and you get to do so much good brainstorming in that, and just thinking through, processing, and plus you get to be outside, so you get the air and the nature, and you get the sun, and you get all those benefits we don't even really talk about from exercising outside. And it's a whole nother aspect, man. Like, you don't have to be in the gym crushing weights and crushing a treadmill every day to get to where you want to go. You can create muscle change that the average person's looking for just in 2 to 3 days a week. And then have those other exercise days be more restorative focused. Could be a game changer, I think, with a lot of people maintaining, their fitness journeys instead of just going super hard for a few weeks and then, falling off. I feel like we're...
Oh, yeah. I just feel like there's so much information out there that it's hard for people to know kind of where they fit in and where it fits into their own life. And it can be just, after coffee on Tuesday mornings, or before you take your dog for a walk, you go for a jog to the end of the road and back. Whether that's the end of the road is really far, really close, it doesn't really matter. Yeah. But allowing it to be part of your daily life and part of your lifestyle, and have it not be such this big intimidating thing that I think it was for me, when I was, I'm still young, but when I was, learning kind of my way in this whole gym thing, I thought, you had to show up and you had to have this mindset and be this thing and, do all these things. But really what it comes down to for most people is, preserving the ability to run in a way that doesn't break down the body for as long as possible. And then doing enough strength or mobility work to, feel good and do all the things that you choose to do. It's not like there is a science to it. People like me go to a lot of years of school to, have knowledge to be able to help people, feel better and live better. But at the end of the day, the recipe here for you or for any individual could be very simple. It could just be that small tweak, that small mindset change that could just get you doing enough to be as active as you choose to be and as healthy as you desire to be. I really appreciate people who don't harbor information like that. I really think it's important that people understand that it might be like the smallest change that could cause you to, pursue a little bit healthier and a little bit more well life. The smallest change.
Yeah, it's hard to make money on telling people to go for a walk. And that's why nobody talks about it. Whereas if I can convince you to, and again, this is coming from a guy that makes his living in a big box gym, right? Which it has its place. People aren't going to have, we don't have the physical labor jobs anymore. We need to create an artificial environment where we're putting the body under load, right? It's just where we are now. And, that's not to say that's a bad thing, but it's not that you don't have to be in there for 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. If you're just trying to move well and be strong enough and, feel good, you can do that in a couple days. And then you go out and do some other things that you maybe enjoy more to keep yourself just active and moving.
Yeah, exactly. Like you could be more specific with like, once a week you want to work pretty hard so that your heart rate gets up, like we could be more specific with, very simply, not even more specific, but like a couple times a week, I think people should be working pretty hard,
Mm-hmm.
feeling like you've worked hard, feeling out of breath.
Yeah.
I think in general, if all health, things considered, that's probably good for us. And then to be pretty active throughout the day, like that's what the demands really are to, continue to see even improvement throughout your life, is to work hard a couple times throughout the week and keep your general level of activity pretty high. You can't really, like you said, you can't make money on it, but that's the long and the short of this whole freaking industry, is if you can stay pretty active and work hard every once in a while, you're pretty chilling.
And I think there's something to that, because as you're saying that, I'm also envisioning just work, right? So when you're at work, you're going to do better going hard a couple days and then maintaining a good momentum the next few days and then getting a couple days to rest. Whereas like,
that's that stress adapt recover, or stress recover adapt thing.
And I think that really just kind of applies all around. And I think that's a concept that, it's very easy. And, while I'm in fitness, it's a sales job at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, even being like physical therapy, when you go to a physical therapist's office, the person that is helping you is still in the sale of physical therapy. That doesn't devalue the profession of physical therapy. I think we're awesome. But yeah, like everybody's in sales. Chiropractors are in sales.
Yeah.
DOs, whatever they are, everybody's, selling a product to you. But I guess, knowing who you're buying the product from, first off, is super important. But yeah. Everybody's trying to sell something to you. It just, I guess, be aware of what you're buying out there, I suppose.
Right.
And that goes for what the information that you're buying as well. People will see an Instagram post offhand, read it, not think about it, but then that will still drive their concept of their own health behaviors. So just be aware of the information that you're taking in about your own body, your own mind, and your own health. I think it's very important that, being online and being in this kind of world that we live in now, that you're able to sort through that kind of thing so that you can form and continue to build productive health and wellness behaviors.
Absolutely. Yeah, I could go on a social media tangent for a while.
Yeah, I could go on and on. Yeah.
All right, well, cool, man. I feel like we could keep talking for the next couple hours, so I almost feel bad ending it. But
I agree. It was great to chop it up. For anybody that's interested in learning more about what I have going on, you can head on over to my channel in the PowerUp Discord. You can head over to my Twitter. They're linked in the Discord somewhere. If you find me, you find me. If not, then you missed out. But graduating physical therapy school here in 2 weeks technically, and then again technically in August, and then I can sit for boards finally in October of 2022, and then I will be treating patients from then on. Until then, I work as a trainer in my free time. Happy to answer any injury-related, fitness-related, performance-related, any sort of questions that you might think that I could possibly have an answer to. It was great to be on.
Hey, man, it's always great to have you. We're lucky to have, guys like you and JD and the rest of the team that really have those kind of individual things that they specialize in. And especially, you coming from more of a clinical setting can kind of give us those recovery or maintenance or prevention, really understand why the body does what it does. So, it just helps to bring a lot of value to the community. So thanks again so much for your time. And, we'll do it again shortly.
Yes, sir. Take care, everybody.
All right, you too. All right, guys, thanks so much for listening in. And, like Zach was saying, if you're listening to this later, drop into the Discord at Zach. Post your questions, your comments, how much you loved the episode, whatever it is that you have. We're here to help in whatever way we can. So until then, we'll see you guys next time.